Mom married 3 weeks after Dad's death, moved in her new husband and his kid. Now, 15 years later, she wants me back. I remember the day my parents sat me and my sister Emma down to tell us they were getting divorced. I was only 7, but even at that age, you can feel when things are falling apart. Emma was 9, and she had this tough girl act going on, trying not to cry, but I could tell she was hurting. We both were. They gave us the whole "it's not your fault" speech, like somehow hearing that would make it less crappy. It didn't. After the divorce, things were rough. We stayed with Mom, and she did her best to keep life going, but it was obvious she was struggling. She worked long hours, and when she was home, she was always tired or just not interested in spending time with us. We went from being a family to just 3 people living in the same house. It was like Dad took the glue that held everything together when he left. A couple of years went by, and that's when Brian came into the picture. I wasn't really paying attention at first. I mean, we were just kids, and it's not like we had a say in Mom's dating life. One day, though, she introduced him to us over dinner. Brian was a nice enough guy, I guess, but he was kind of quiet and awkward, like he didn't know how to talk to kids. I remember sitting there trying to figure out what was so special about him. But the real kicker wasn't Brian. It was Mason, his baby son. Mason was only a few months old when Mom started seeing Brian, and she instantly became obsessed with him. I'm talking full-on 24/7 mom mode, like she had hit the reset button on parenting. Emma and I just stood there watching it happen like, what the hell is going on? She started acting like Mason was her own kid. I get that Brian was a package deal or whatever, but it felt like we got pushed aside for this baby that wasn't even ours. I remember one night when I was sitting at the table doing my homework, and Mason was crying. Mom was all over him, soothing him, rocking him, the whole thing. I couldn't help but think, where was all that attention when we needed it? Mom and Brian got serious pretty fast. It wasn't long before she started dropping hints about us all being a family and how she was so happy. We were going to be a part of this new chapter in her life. She didn't ask how we felt about it, though. Emma was old enough to be mad about it, but I think I was more confused than anything. One minute it's just me, Emma, and Mom, and the next we've got this stranger and his baby moving into our house. It felt like everything was changing, and we had no control over any of it. When Mom and Brian got engaged, things got even weirder. I remember she was super excited, like it was the best thing that had ever happened to her. She started planning the wedding right away. I don't even think she asked us what we thought about it. It was like we were just along for the ride, and our opinions didn't matter. Then, right before the wedding, my dad died in a car accident. It was like the worst timing possible. We were devastated. Emma was a wreck, and I didn't know how to handle it either. Dad may not have been around much after the divorce, but he was still our dad. Losing him hit us hard. You'd think under the circumstances, Mom would have put the wedding on hold, right? Give us time to grieve, maybe? But nope. The wedding went ahead as planned. She didn't even hesitate. I'll never forget how cold that felt. She was all smiles, planning her big day with Brian, while Emma and I were barely holding it together. I remember thinking, is this really happening? Is this what's important to her right now? On the day of the wedding, it felt like we were in some alternate reality. I mean, here we were, just weeks after our dad died, standing there in fancy clothes, watching Mom marry this guy. I don't think either of us said a word the whole day. The ceremony was just weird. Brian's family was there, cooing over Mason like he was the star of the show. Meanwhile, Emma and I were trying not to cry. That's when the real shift happened. After the wedding, Mom told us, and this still blows my mind, she told us that if we wanted to keep seeing Dad's parents, our grandparents, they'd have to include Mason too. Can you believe that? She straight up said that we couldn't spend time with our own grandparents unless Mason was part of it. Emma lost her mind when she heard that. I think she yelled at Mom for a solid 5 minutes, and honestly, I don't blame her. It was like she was trying to erase our dad completely and replace him with Brian and Mason. Our grandparents tried to reason with her. They offered to take just me and Emma for weekends, to do stuff like we used to, and they even said they'd pay for everything. But Mom wasn't having it. She said that if they wanted to see us, they had to see Mason too. I'll never forget the look on Emma's face when she heard that. It was like the final straw for her. She was done. Mom's reasoning was that we were all a family now, and Mason was a part of that. But here's the thing. He wasn't our family. He wasn't Dad's son, and he never met Dad. Why did he have to be included in everything related to Dad's side of the family? It didn't make sense to us, and no matter how much we tried to explain it, Mom just didn't care. Emma and I started distancing ourselves after that. We didn't want to be around this fake family dynamic that Mom was trying to force on us. It felt like Mason was her priority now, and we were just these extra kids she had to deal with. It was like we were being phased out of her life, little by little, and there wasn't much we could do about it. Looking back, I realized that was the beginning of the end for our relationship with Mom. She was so focused on building this new life with Brian and Mason that she didn't notice we were slipping away. Or maybe she did, and she just didn't care. Either way, things were never the same after that. After the wedding, things got even more awkward between me, Emma, and Mom. It was like she expected us to magically adjust to this new life with Brian and Mason, like we could just flip a switch and start feeling like one big happy family. Spoiler, that didn't happen. Not even close. See, Mom started pushing this idea of family unity hard. She kept going on about how we needed to treat Mason like he was our little brother, which just felt wrong. I mean, yeah, Mason was a cute kid, but he wasn't our brother. He wasn't Dad's kid. He was just Brian's son. I don't know if Mom thought we'd forget about our real dad, or if she really believed we'd bond with Mason like he'd been there from the start, but that's not how things work. I remember one specific day that really hit me hard. It was Dad's birthday, a day that was always kind of sacred for us. Even after the divorce, Emma and I would spend it with Dad's family, our grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, people who actually knew him and loved him. We'd go to his favorite restaurant, sometimes visit his grave, and just share memories. It was our way of keeping his memory alive. But this year, Mom decided things were going to be different. She sat us down a week before and said, "This year, we're celebrating your dad's birthday together, here at home, with Mason and Brian." I could feel my stomach drop. I was like, what? That was our time with Dad's side of the family? Mason didn't even know our dad, and Brian barely knew him. It felt like a slap in the face. Emma spoke up first, and she wasn't subtle about it. She said, "Why would Mason be there? This has nothing to do with him." Mom shot back with, "Mason is part of this family now, and it's important we all honor your father together. We don't exclude people in this family." I wanted to argue, but at the same time, I knew where it was going. Emma and I had been having the same fight with her for months. No matter what we said, she always twisted it into us being selfish or not wanting to include Mason. It was frustrating because it wasn't that we hated Mason or anything. We just didn't want to force him into something that wasn't his. And let's be real, it was more about us not wanting our dad's memory turned into some awkward blended family event that felt fake. So I tried to be calm and explain it. I said, "Mom, Dad's birthday has always been a thing with his side of the family. They were there for us when he died, and it means a lot to keep that going. Mason doesn't need to be there." She looked at me like I just said the worst thing ever. "Lucas, you don't get to decide who is part of this family. If you want to honor your dad, you do it with all of us or not at all." At that moment, I just knew there was no winning this argument. No matter what we said, she was going to make this about including Mason and Brian, whether it made sense or not. So we did the only thing we could. We stopped trying to argue. We figured it was better to go along with it for now and then do our own thing later. The day of Dad's birthday came, and I swear, it was one of the most uncomfortable days of my life. Mom cooked this big dinner, and we all sat around the table like it was some kind of family reunion. Brian tried to make conversation with us about Dad, like he had any idea who he was. It was cringy. The whole time I was just staring at my plate, counting down the minutes until I could leave. And then there was Mason. Poor kid didn't know what was going on. He was just running around, being a typical 3-year-old, completely oblivious to the fact that this day had nothing to do with him. I couldn't even be mad at him. It wasn't his fault, but it still felt wrong that he was there. After dinner, Mom pulled out this birthday cake. She had put "Happy Birthday, Dad" on it, and as we lit the candles, she made all of us, including Mason, stand around and sing "Happy Birthday." I remember standing there, my mouth barely moving, trying to keep it together. It felt like she was rewriting history, like she was trying to force this fake narrative that Mason and Brian were part of Dad's life somehow, but they weren't. They never were. Emma had it worse. She couldn't handle it at all. Halfway through the night, she stormed out of the house, and I didn't blame her. I stayed behind because I didn't want to make things even more dramatic, but I wished I'd left with her. After that birthday, things just kept going downhill. Mom kept pushing Mason into more and more of our traditions, and every time we tried to push back, she'd accuse us of being cold or heartless. She'd say things like, "Mason's just a little boy. How can you be so cruel to him?" It was like she refused to understand what we were really upset about. It wasn't about Mason. It was about the fact that she was replacing our dad's memory with this new life she was building, and we were expected to go along with it, no questions asked. That's when I realized something that stuck with me for a long time. It wasn't just about blending families for Mom. It was about control. She wanted to control how we remembered Dad, how we lived our lives, and how we fit into her new version of what a family should look like. And if we didn't fall in line, we were the bad guys. I didn't know how to deal with it back then. I just knew I was angry. Angry at her for forcing Mason into everything. Angry at Brian for going along with it. And angry at myself for not standing up to her more. But what could I do? I was just a kid trying to hold on to whatever little bit of my old life was left. And the more I tried to hold on, the more it felt like it was slipping away. That year changed everything. Emma and I started distancing ourselves more and more from Mom and her new family. And while it wasn't the breaking point yet, it was the beginning of us realizing that things were never going back to the way they were. Things kept getting worse after Dad's birthday. It felt like no matter what Emma or I did, Mom was determined to shove this new family down our throats. I don't think she understood, or maybe she didn't care, how badly all this blending was affecting us. We couldn't just snap our fingers and accept Brian and Mason as replacements for Dad, but she acted like we were the ones being difficult. By the time I turned 18, I had pretty much reached my limit. The house didn't even feel like my home anymore. It was like Brian had taken over, and everything revolved around him and Mason. Brian wasn't a bad guy, but he wasn't my dad. He had his own way of running things, and I couldn't help but feel like an outsider in what used to be my house. Every decision, every rule, it was all Brian says this, or Brian thinks that. I didn't care what Brian thought. I just wanted my life back, the one where my opinions actually mattered. One day I was in my room, packing up some of my stuff, getting ready to move in with my girlfriend Jess. I wasn't leaving because I didn't love my mom. I did. But I needed space. It felt like the walls were closing in on me, and I couldn't breathe with everything going on in that house. Jess and I had been planning this move for months, and I was finally ready to get out. Mom came into my room while I was packing. I could tell from the look on her face that she wasn't happy about it. "So, you're really going through with this?" she asked, crossing her arms. I nodded. "Yeah, Mom, it's time." She stood there for a minute, not saying anything, just watching me throw stuff into boxes. Then she sighed and said, "I don't understand why you're running away from your family." That word, family, hit me hard. I stopped what I was doing and turned to her. "I'm not running away from family," I said, "but this doesn't feel like my family anymore." Her face changed. She looked like I had slapped her. "What are you talking about? Of course this is your family. We're all in this together." I couldn't believe she still didn't get it. "Mom, ever since you married Brian, everything has been about him and Mason. It's like Emma and I don't even matter anymore. We're just here. You're trying to replace Dad with them, and I can't deal with it." She shook her head, frustrated. "I'm not trying to replace your father. I just want us all to be a family. Why can't you see that?" I didn't know how to explain it to her. It wasn't that I didn't want a family. I just didn't want this forced version of it. "I don't feel like I'm part of this family," I said, trying to stay calm. "I feel like I'm stuck in someone else's life." Mom looked like she was about to argue again, but then she sighed and sat down on the edge of my bed. "I just want you to be happy," she said quietly. "I want us all to be happy." "I know, Mom," I said, softening a little. "But I'm not happy here. I need space. I need to figure things out on my own." We sat in silence for a minute. I could tell she didn't want me to go, but at the same time she knew I had made up my mind. After a while she stood up and left the room without saying anything else. I went back to packing, feeling a mix of guilt and relief. It wasn't that I wanted to hurt her, but I couldn't keep living like this. Moving in with Jess felt like a breath of fresh air. I finally had my own space, a place where I could be myself without all the drama. Jess understood what I was going through, and she supported me every step of the way. For the first time in years, I felt like I could actually relax. But, of course, things weren't quiet for long. About a week after I moved out, Mom called me. She wasn't happy. She said I hadn't been around enough to see Mason, that he missed me, and I needed to make more of an effort to include him in my life. I couldn't believe it. Even after I left, she was still pushing this whole "Mason is your brother" thing. It wasn't that I hated the kid. I didn't. But I didn't see him as my brother, and I wasn't going to pretend I did just to make Mom feel better. I tried to explain that I needed space, that I was focusing on my own life now, but she didn't want to hear it. She just kept talking about how Mason was hurt and how I was abandoning my family. The guilt trips were relentless, but I wasn't caving this time. I'd finally gotten out, and I wasn't going back. Things stayed tense after that. I didn't go back to the house, and I didn't visit much. Emma had already started distancing herself, too. She wasn't as vocal about it as I was, but she felt the same way. It was like we were slowly being pushed out of Mom's life, and Mason was taking our place. It hurt, but what could we do? Mom had made her choice, and we had made ours. It was quiet for a few months after that. I thought maybe we'd finally hit some sort of balance. Mom with her new family, and me with my new life. But then, out of nowhere, she showed up at my job. I was in the middle of a shift when she walked in. I could tell by the look on her face that she wasn't there to chat. She was pissed. I wasn't sure what had set her off this time, but I had a feeling I was about to find out. "We need to talk," she said, crossing her arms and glaring at me. I sighed. "Mom, I'm at work. Can't this wait?" "No, it can't," she snapped. "I'm tired of you ignoring your family." "Here we go again." I tried to keep my voice calm. "I'm not ignoring my family. I've been busy." "Busy? Too busy to see your own brother?" she shot back. I clenched my jaw. "Mason is not my brother." That did it. Mom's face turned red, and I could see her hands shaking. "How dare you say that? I raised him like he was my own son. He is your brother, and you're treating him like he doesn't even exist." I had had enough. I wasn't going to let her guilt me into something I didn't believe. "Look, I didn't ask for this, okay? I didn't ask for you to remarry or bring Mason into our lives. I'm not saying I hate him, but he's not my brother. He's Brian's kid, and I don't have to include him in my life if I don't want to." Mom stood there staring at me like I was a stranger. "I can't believe you've turned into this person," she said, her voice low. "I thought I raised you better than this." I didn't know what else to say. I just looked at her and said, "Maybe you didn't raise me at all." Update 1. After that confrontation with Mom at my job, things between us went from bad to worse. I didn't think they could, but here we were. The tension had been building for years, but now it was like we were in this silent war. She wasn't talking to me, and I wasn't making any effort to reach out either. It felt like something had broken that couldn't be fixed, and honestly, I didn't have the energy to try and mend it anymore. A couple weeks went by, and I thought maybe we'd just leave things where they were. I didn't mind the silence. I was finally getting some space, and I could focus on my own life without all that family drama weighing me down. But of course, it wasn't going to stay quiet for long. Mom had a way of pulling you back in whether you wanted to or not. One night, I was at home with Jess, just relaxing after a long day, when my phone started blowing up with texts. It was Mom. She hadn't texted me since our fight, so I figured this wasn't going to be anything good. I didn't even want to open them at first, but the notifications just kept coming, so I finally gave in. The texts were long. Really long. Like, I had to scroll for a minute to get through all of it. She was ranting about how I'd abandoned the family, and how Mason was asking where I was and why I wasn't visiting anymore. She said I was hurting him by not being around, and that I was being cruel to a little kid who had done nothing wrong. I just sat there staring at my phone, completely drained. It was the same argument, over and over again. She couldn't accept that I didn't see Mason as my brother. She refused to let it go. And now she was making it sound like I was some villain for not playing along with her perfect family fantasy. I didn't even know how to respond. Jess, sitting next to me, saw my face and asked, "Is it your mom again?" I nodded. "Yeah, she's saying the same stuff. That I'm being unfair to Mason, that I'm hurting the family." Jess rolled her eyes. "She doesn't get it, does she?" "Nope," I said, tossing my phone on the table. "She's never going to get it." Jess put her hand on my shoulder. "You don't owe her anything. You've done everything you could to explain how you feel. If she doesn't want to listen, that's on her." I knew she was right, but it didn't make it any easier. There was always that nagging guilt. Even though I knew Mom was in the wrong, part of me still felt like I was the bad guy. I wasn't trying to hurt Mason, and I didn't want to make him feel left out. But at the same time, I couldn't keep pretending like this whole situation was normal. A few days later, things took a turn. Mom started calling me, and I ignored the first couple of calls, figuring she was just going to keep pushing the same argument. But then, she left a voicemail that caught me off guard. In the voicemail, she wasn't just upset anymore. She was angry, like really angry. Her voice was shaking, and she said something along the lines of, "If you want to be part of this family, you need to step up and stop acting like a child. Mason is your brother, whether you like it or not, and if you keep ignoring him, you're going to lose your family. You're better than this, Lucas. I didn't raise you to be so selfish." That last part really got under my skin. Selfish? I had spent years trying to keep the peace, trying to balance what I needed with what Mom wanted. I had bent over backwards to make things work, but now I was being called selfish because I didn't want to play along anymore. It felt like everything I had done for her, for our family, didn't matter. All she cared about was Mason and her version of the family she'd built around him. I played the voicemail for Jess later that night, and she just shook her head. "She's trying to guilt trip you again," she said. "You don't have to listen to that." I knew she was right. I had been guilt-tripped for years, but it was like a reflex now. Part of me still felt like I owed Mom something, even when she was clearly in the wrong. A few days passed, and then something happened that really pushed me over the edge. Mom showed up at Jess's apartment. She didn't even call or text me beforehand, just showed up at the front door demanding to talk. Jess opened the door, and I could hear Mom's voice before I even saw her. She was upset, and she wasn't going to leave until she got what she wanted. Jess came back to get me, looking a little shaken. "Your mom's here," she said. She's kind of freaking out. I didn't want to deal with it. I really didn't. But I couldn't just leave her standing out there either, so I went to the door. The second she saw me, she started in. "We need to talk. Now," she said, her voice sharp. I didn't even invite her in. I just stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "What do you want, Mom?" She crossed her arms and glared at me. "You need to stop this. This is ridiculous, Lucas. You've cut off your own family for no reason." "I didn't cut off my family," I said, trying to stay calm. "I just don't want to be part of something that doesn't feel real." Mom threw her hands up. "Mason is real. Brian is real. This is your family whether you want to accept it or not." "I don't care about that," I shot back. "You're trying to force something that I don't believe in. Mason isn't my brother, and Brian isn't my dad. I'm not going to pretend like they are just to make you happy." That's when she said it. The thing that really made me see red. "Well, if you can't accept them as family, then maybe you don't deserve to be part of this family either." I just stood there, staring at her, trying to process what she just said. I couldn't believe it. She was willing to throw me away because I wouldn't fall in line with her new family. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just turned around and went back inside, closing the door behind me. I could hear her shouting outside, but I didn't care anymore. Something had snapped inside me. All the guilt, all the pressure, it was gone. If she wanted to cut me off, fine. I wasn't going to keep fighting for a place in a family that didn't even feel like mine. That night, I blocked her number. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was necessary. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Update 2. After I blocked Mom's number, things went quiet. Really quiet. I thought maybe she'd try to get in touch through other people. Maybe Jess, maybe Emma, but nothing. It was like a switch had flipped, and just like that, the drama stopped. At first, it felt weird. I'd been so used to the constant pressure, the guilt trips, and the manipulation that when it all stopped, I didn't know what to do with myself. But slowly, the silence started to feel like a relief. I spent a lot more time with Jess, focusing on our life together. For once, I wasn't carrying around all this weight from my family. Jess and I could actually enjoy our time together without me constantly checking my phone or stressing out about the latest thing my mom had done or said. It felt like I was finally living my own life, and not the one Mom had tried to force me into. But of course, peace never lasts forever. One day, a few months after everything went down, I got a message from my aunt, Mom's sister. I hadn't spoken to her in a while, but we'd always gotten along pretty well. She didn't take sides during all the drama with Mom, which I appreciated. The message was short and kind of vague. It just said, "Hey, can we talk? It's important." I knew something was up, so I called her. She answered on the first ring, and the first thing she said was, "Lucas, have you talked to your mom lately?" I sighed. "No, I haven't. We're not really in contact anymore." There was a pause on the other end. I could tell she was trying to figure out how to word whatever she was about to say. "Well, I don't want to get in the middle of things, but you should probably know that your mom's been telling everyone that you and Emma abandoned her and Mason." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Here we go again. "She's saying we abandoned her?" I asked, my voice tight. "Yeah," my aunt said softly. "She's telling people that she tried to reach out to you both, but you've been ignoring her, that you're refusing to be part of the family and she doesn't know what to do." I couldn't help it. I laughed, even though none of this was funny. "Of course, she's the victim now. Classic." "I don't know all the details, Lucas," my aunt said, her voice a little defensive. "I'm just telling you what she's been saying. I didn't want to get involved, but I thought you should know." "Thanks for letting me know," I said, feeling my anger start to build again. "But she's twisting the truth. She cut us off the second we didn't play by her rules. She wanted us to accept Mason as family, and when we didn't, she wrote us off." There was a long pause on her end, like she wasn't sure how to respond. Finally, she said, "Well, I thought you should hear it from me, rather than through the grapevine." "I appreciate it," I said, trying to keep my frustration out of my voice. "But honestly, I don't think there's anything left to fix." After I hung up the phone, I sat there for a while, just thinking. It was hard to wrap my head around the fact that, after everything, Mom was still trying to make us out to be the bad guys. It was like she couldn't handle the idea that she'd pushed us away, so instead she flipped the script and made it look like we were the ones who'd abandoned her. That's when I realized something. This wasn't about Mason or Brian or any of the family drama. This was about control. Mom had always needed to be in control of everything. She needed to control the narrative, control the family dynamic, control how we remembered Dad. And when Emma and I stopped letting her control us, she lost it. A few days after the call with my aunt, I decided to reach out to Emma. We hadn't talked much since everything blew up, but I knew she was going through the same stuff I was. We set up a time to meet for coffee, and when we finally sat down, it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. Talking to her felt different now, like we were on the same page in a way we hadn't been before. "I talked to Aunt Sarah," I said, after we'd settled into our seats. Emma raised an eyebrow. "Yeah? What did she say?" I told her about the conversation, about how Mom was telling people we'd abandoned her. Emma rolled her eyes so hard, I thought they might get stuck. "Of course she's playing the victim," Emma said. "She always does. It's never her fault." "I know," I said, shaking my head. "But it still pisses me off. Like, how can she not see that she did this? She's the one who pushed us away." "She doesn't want to see it," Emma said, taking a sip of her coffee. "She's never going to admit she's wrong. In her mind, she's this perfect mom who's just trying to hold the family together, and we're the ungrateful kids who don't appreciate her." That hit me harder than I expected. Perfect mom? Was that how she saw herself? I guess it made sense. In her world, she probably thought she was doing everything right, that she was creating this happy, blended family. But the reality was so far from that. "I don't know what to do anymore," I admitted, leaning back in my chair. "I've tried everything. I've explained how I feel. I've tried setting boundaries, and nothing works. She just ignores it and keeps pushing her version of things." Emma nodded. "Same here. I've been trying to distance myself for years, but every time I do, she pulls the poor me card and makes me feel guilty." We sat in silence for a while, both of us just processing everything. It felt good to talk to Emma about it, though. It made me realize I wasn't alone in all this. We were both dealing with the same thing, and neither of us had the answers. But at least we had each other. "I guess we just have to accept that this is who she is," Emma said finally. "She's not going to change. She's always going to try and control us, and we have to decide how much of that we're willing to put up with." I nodded. "Yeah, I guess so." We finished our coffee, and as we left the cafe, I felt a weird sense of closure. I wasn't happy about how things had turned out with Mom, but I wasn't as angry anymore. I'd done everything I could to make things work, but sometimes, no matter how hard you try, people just won't change. And that's not on you. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could move forward without the weight of all this family drama on my shoulders. Maybe things with Mom would never be the way they used to be, but I had my own life to live now. And I wasn't going to let her control that anymore. Mom wants me to split my college fund, that Dad left me with my step-siblings, or she is going to kick me out. So let me lay it all out. I'm a 17-year-old girl living in a mixed family that's not quite mixed enough to blend smoothly. My mom, 43 and still rocking her youth vibe, married my stepdad about 3 years ago. Though they dated for nearly 5 years before tying the knot, the ceremony felt more like checking a box than starting a new chapter. Let's just say it wasn't the blast off to happily ever after some people might expect. Now about my step-siblings. There's Jackson, a year older than me, and Emma, who's 2 years my junior. We all attend the same high school, yet our circles don't overlap. It's like we're in different orbits in the same solar system, close, but not touching. Before we get deeper into the now, let's backtrack to the backstory. My mom and my dad were never married. Dad died when I was just a tot, too young to really remember him. From what I've pieced together, he was this rebel who fell hard for my mom, the life of any party. But his family? They weren't fans of her free spirit. They had their future all mapped out for him, and my mom wasn't part of that picture. Dad's health took a nosedive when he was diagnosed with leukemia. It was already in the late stages when they caught it. He was only 27, and suddenly the countdown started. The good part? He managed to set up an education fund for me before he passed. That fund became my golden ticket, a promise of future stability that my mom swore was mine alone to use when the time came. Fast forward to when I was 8, and enter my stepdad. He showed up not long after we moved towns, a decision my mom made because sticking around in the place where she and Dad met was too much for her heart to handle. With him came Jackson and Emma, carrying their own baggage from a mom who ditched them post-divorce to chase a new love story. My stepdad was left to pick up the pieces. I had hopes, you know. Like any kid, the idea of suddenly having a bigger family seemed like hitting the jackpot. A new dad, a brother, and a sister. It sounded like the perfect setup for those family movie nights and holiday card photos. But reality checked in soon enough. The whole family vibe? It never clicked. Living under the same roof didn't make us family. We were more like housemates who just happened to share some DNA through marriage. Don't get me wrong, it's not like they were mean or anything. There was no overt drama, no shouting matches over dinner. It was something subtler, like a constant buzz you can't pinpoint but can't ignore either. It didn't help that the energy was way off. My stepdad and his kids, they connected in a way that just didn't include me. I tried, believe me. I made efforts to join in, to stir up some kind of bond. But every attempt felt like throwing a rock across a frozen lake, hoping it wouldn't just skid and settle without making an impact. Mom, though, she was a different story. They embraced her, loved her in ways I couldn't help but envy. I wondered if it was because, in their eyes, she replaced their nightmare of an ex-wife and mom who, as the town's whispers went, was more gold digger than caregiver. The whole setup left me feeling like a guest in my own life. Not mistreated, but misplaced. Like a puzzle piece from a different box. Observing all this as I grew up, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being the odd one out. It was like everyone else got the manual on how to be a family, and I got the wrong edition. Despite all this, I never really talked about it. What was there to say? That I felt left out? That it seemed like they were a family before I came and would be a family whether I was there or not? It sounded petty, even to my ears. As I got older, these feelings didn't exactly fade, but I got better at managing them. I figured maybe it was all in my head. Maybe I was just the introspective type, making mountains out of molehills. But deep down, I knew I was missing something vital, a connection, a sense of belonging. My room became my sanctuary. It was the one place where I could drown out that buzz, that constant reminder that I was an add-on to an already established group. And as high school rolled on, I threw myself into studies, into plans for college. That fund my dad left? It became more than just money. It became my ticket out, my hope for a fresh start where I could define family on my own terms. Things went on like this until one evening, just a regular Tuesday, when my mom decided to drop a bomb. No, not the dramatic kind, just a heavy one. We were clearing up after dinner, the hum of the dishwasher blending with my thoughts, when she said we needed to talk. She had that tone, the one that meant something big was stirring, something that could shake up my carefully laid plans. She started off with how proud she was of me, looking to graduate soon, how I'd grown into someone she admired, compliments that, under any other circumstance, would have warmed me. But that night, they felt like a lead-in to something tougher, and I was right. She told me that my stepfather hadn't been able to save money for his kids to go to college, so she needed me to help my family out. I let my step-siblings use the money from my college fund as well. Jackson had taken a gap year and was about to start college at the same time as me. So that's what the conversation was really about. Legally, my mother couldn't control the funds because in his will, my father had clearly stated that only I would be able to control where I spent my money after I turned 18. And if I'm being honest, I didn't want to share the money with my step-siblings. For starters, I didn't consider them family, and I'm sure that neither did they. And secondly, even if I didn't end up using the entire amount that my father had kept for me, I would still like to use it for myself. That kind of money could really help me get a head start and be useful to me when I get my own apartment and stuff. Until I started earning when he was going to help me out, I had already saved a lot since I went to public school instead of private, and my mother didn't have to spend any money on my education so far. I was also a really good student, so I was hoping to get a scholarship and whichever college I decided to apply and enroll in. Money had never been a matter of concern for me, but now that I was getting older and I was about to turn 18 in a few months, I was starting to think about saving and earning. So giving away money from my funds to my step-siblings didn't sound like a great idea. So I told my mother that I wouldn't be sharing those funds with them because I didn't think that it was necessary. If Jackson really wanted to go to college, he could just do what millions of kids do anyway and get a student loan. My mother was not pleased with my answer and she said I was being selfish, but I didn't even disagree. I was indeed being selfish and I didn't see anything wrong with it. So instead of arguing with her, I just told her that I was being selfish, and it was completely fine because I didn't consider my step-siblings family. That's when my mother started screaming at me because apparently she believed that what I had said was no less than a criminal offense. It took me a few seconds to even process the fact that she was losing her mind, simply because I had spoken the truth and told her that I didn't think of my step-siblings as family. The double standards were crazy, because on one hand, The family had been treating me like an outsider for the past 8 years, and she had never seemed to notice it. Well, maybe she didn't notice it and she just didn't care. But when it came to me, I had to consider them family and treat them as such for absolutely no reason. I tried to speak to her calmly and without screaming in her face, but there was no point because she was already going off on me and calling me ungrateful and whatnot. So I waited for her to finish yelling at me, and then I told her that she could scream at me all she wanted, but I wasn't going to change my mind. The only thing that screaming at me was going to accomplish was it was only going to alienate me even more and make me feel even less inclined to help them out in any capacity. My mother calmed down a little after I said that, and I thought that we were finally going to have a rational discussion afterwards and I would finally be able to voice out my feelings. But that was foolish of me. I had forgotten that in that household, my feelings absolutely didn't matter, and all that mattered was if my mother, my stepfather, and my step-siblings were happy. My happiness was not very important to any of them. So, after my mother calmed down, she told me that I had a week to make up my mind, but after that, she would be forced to kick me out of the house. I thought she was joking because it was simply ridiculous, but she told me that she wasn't. And since my birthday was coming up in less than a month, she would soon not even be legally obliged to let me live with them because I wouldn't be a minor anymore. So I would be out of the house, and I would be completely on my own if I didn't agree to share the college fund that my father had, specifically just for me with my step-siblings. I could hardly even believe that my own mother would say such a thing and put me in such a difficult position just for the sake of my step-siblings when I was supposed to be her own flesh and blood. She told me to tread carefully and think this over because this decision could cost me everything. And then she left the room while I sat there and tried to process what she just said. It was incredibly insulting for me to be treated that way by my own mother. And that day I made up my mind that I was going to get out of this house no matter what the cost. So I started talking to my friends and then told them that I needed help to find an apartment of my own because I was planning to move out for my 18th birthday. I told them everything that my mother had said and explained the urgency of the situation to them. I knew that once I turned 18, I would get all the money, and then I would be able to control where I spent it. Yes, I would have to stick to a budget and choose my degree in college very carefully, but it was worth it because that meant that at least now I would be able to move out and live on my own instead of putting up with my family, or rather forcing them to tolerate me. Because after that conversation with my mother, it was clearer than ever that I was not welcome in that house at all, and I really was an afterthought. All these years, I had not been overthinking anything. In fact, I might have even been underthinking things because I really had never seen this coming. A couple of days passed, and a friend of mine told me that she had been able to speak to a cousin who was also applying to the same colleges that I was because we had an interest in the same field. She was planning to live in an apartment because she wanted to be independent from the beginning, and my friend had suggested that I get in touch with her, so if we ended up going to the same college, we could rent out an apartment together and live there. I felt that it was a great idea and got in touch with my friend's cousin almost immediately. We worked out everything and I told him about my situation as well, and she seemed to be very empathetic, and I could tell that she was a nice person and I would get along with her. So that part was all sorted out, and the only thing I had to worry about was where I would live until college started. Since there were quite a few months to go before that, but it turned out to be pretty easy for me to figure that one out because my friends told me that I could take to living with them until college finally started. It was a messy and risky plan, but I was willing to go through with it because anything would be better than living with my mother and these people. Because the way that I was being treated after that fight with my mom was horrible. And I don't mean horrible in the sense that they were speaking to me badly or torturing me or whatever, but what they were doing was far more humiliating. They had all ganged up on me and were acting like I was the single most disgusting creature to ever exist. Like if I would enter a room, everybody would instantly stop talking and go back to their own rooms. They would give me the side. I all the time and refused to even speak to me like I had done something wrong. It was humiliating, and I felt like running away because it just felt so bad. It took me a while to arrange something for myself, but I made up my mind that as soon as my friends were ready to take me in, I would leave this place. So the day that my mother spoke to me again to ask me if I had changed my mind or not, I decided to tell her the truth and then leave. I told her that I had not changed my mind as a matter of fact, and that I would actually be leaving this place. I told her that the way that she and her family had been treating me for the past week was nothing short of psychotic, and I couldn't put up with it anymore. I told her that I had already spoken to a couple of friends, and that I would be living with them until I could stop college and move away from here. I said that I never wanted to see her again, so she was free to kick me out, and it wouldn't make a difference to me. I already had a plan in mind, so I wasn't very surprised when my mother started yelling at me once more and told me that I needed to get out of her house because this was no place for selfish, ungrateful brats like me. I left pretty gladly, and I was happy to see the last of them. But that wasn't the end of the road for my plan. During the time that I had been spending in my room all by myself, I had been thinking of ways to get back at my mother, ever since she got married to my stepfather. Life had changed for me, and not in a good way. But she didn't even seem to care about it because she was happy with her new family. I had tried to be happy for her and suppressed my own feelings about this, but now it was very obvious that she didn't care about me in general, and her stepkids were more important to her than me. The way she had been treating me made me feel like crap, and I had made up my mind that I was not going to let this go unanswered. So that's why, as soon as I was out of the house, I decided to spill the beans on her and let everybody know what kind of a person she really was. The only reason I had even waited for a week to get out of her house and then speak about her ridiculous demands was because I didn't want her to be able to have any access to me to even tell me how disappointed she was in me or whatever, because nobody in their right mind would ever support the things that she had said to me. And I knew that once I had moved in with a friend, I decided to go online and make a post about my mother. I typed out the incident that took place and how my mother had been screaming at me just because I didn't want to contribute to my step-siblings' college fund. I also mentioned none of them had ever treated me like family, but my mother never seemed to have a problem with that. It was only a problem when I did the same thing to them. I talked about the double standards. I also mentioned how she had practically forgotten about me once she started living with her new family. And I also said that I found her to be the single most selfish being on this planet because of the way that she had been behaving with me just for saying no to something completely ridiculous. Any sane person in my position would have said no. Since the money that she had been talking about had been left to me specifically by my father, it was not for anybody else to use. And I didn't think it was fair to demand that I share it with people who never made me feel like a part of their family. I might have even considered it if my step-siblings had been nice to me at any point, but that was not the case here. I was really frustrated, and I let out all my frustration in that one post. I knew that this negatively impacted my mother since I had a lot of people who followed me, including my father's friends and their kids. But at the time, I just didn't care, and I wanted to get back at her. Truth be told, she had been my only source of support and happiness throughout my life because I had only one parent to count on, and my grandparents weren't really in touch with me. She had been my first and most important friend. So when she chose my step-siblings over me, it felt like a huge betrayal. I was really hurt, and I just wanted to get it all out of my system without caring about the consequences. So I made that post, and exactly what I had expected would happen is what happened. I received several messages from my mother saying that I had ruined her life because everyone had seen that post and it had been shared numerous times. My mother was pretty popular among her circle of friends. There was no big surprise that people were just looking for an excuse to gossip about her, and I had played right into their hands. She had tried to call me several times, but I didn't answer any calls, and neither did I respond to any texts. I was just miserable. And I had hoped that making that post would make me feel less upset. But the messages that my mother sent me after that only made me feel worse about my decision. I could tell through her text that she was really torn up about this. She said things like, she never expected me to do something like this, that she had believed that she had raised me to be kind and compassionate, but I was the opposite of both those things, and she couldn't even believe that I was her daughter anymore. And then she pulled out the big guns and told me that had my father been alive today to witness this vindictive and malicious side of me, he would be terribly disappointed and wouldn't even want to be related to me. That really got me, and I felt like I was doing something horrible. I started rethinking everything, and that's what brought me here eventually. At this point, I don't even know if it was right of me to not want to share my funds with my step-siblings. I don't know if I should make things right with my mother and the others because I don't even know if I can face them anymore after what I did. But also, this might be a very clever way of trying to manipulate me. And if it is, it's definitely working. That's why I need you guys to help me. Because now that everybody has the facts, I can finally come to a conclusion. So am I the a-hole for refusing to share my college fund with my step-siblings and then making a post against my mother? Update 1. Hi. So first, so much for the response. A lot of you sent me really kind messages and it made me feel better about myself and what I did. I guess I need that to see things for what they truly are. I was about to give my mother a chance again just because I wanted to see the good in her. And I wanted to believe that she wasn't a bad person. But what kind of mother says and does the things that she did? She's just not a good person, and it's time that I accepted it instead of trying to fight it. So I blocked to make sure that she couldn't reach out to me again. I knew that if she texted me again, it would only be to manipulate me or to get that post down. I don't want to take that post down. I want it to stay up at least until she apologizes to me. She knows where I am because my friend's mother told her that I was living with them, so she knows where to reach me. And in spite of knowing if she doesn't reach out to me, I'll take it as a sign that neither does she care about me and that she cares more about her own reputation. Update 2. So it's been 2 weeks since I've been living with my friend and have moved out from my stepfather's house. After that post, I had absolutely zero contact with everyone from my family. I did go to school a couple of days and I ran into Emily a few times, but she just shot me a really nasty look and pretended like I wasn't even there. Not surprising, considering the fact that they are pretty much expert in pretending that I don't exist. They have been doing it for the past 8 years. They must have found it easier now. Anyway, my mother finally came to visit me last evening. She arrived here with a black plastic bag that people generally use for trash and dumped it in the living room, saying that it had all my leftover stuff in it. Basically, everything that I had been able to pack into my duffel bag when I was leaving my house. It felt a little insulting that she had used a trash bag to pack my stuff, and it was way more insulting when she dumped it all on the floor of the living room, leaving me to gather at my friend and her parents, who saw this all unfold, was scandalized. They did not appreciate my mother's behavior one bit, and actually took it upon themselves to argue with her about it. They told her that considering the fact that I was her only daughter, she should have more compassion for me instead of treating me so cruelly. They really scolded her, but she didn't take it kindly. She told them that they had no right to speak about her parents' techniques when they were the ones harboring a delinquent like me. I almost burst out laughing when she said that because I was far from a delinquent. I was literally a scholar student, and she had known that. I almost mentioned it myself, but I didn't have to. Thanks to my friend who stood up for me, she told my mother off and said that she was grateful that her parents were nothing like my mother and had a heart. It turned into a bit of a catfight, after which my mother got really huffy and left. I was really thankful for my friend and her parents. I don't think it was really necessary for them to stand up for me, but they did, and I couldn't be happier about it. This is probably the first time in my life that I had somebody to fight for me on my behalf, and it was just really touching. But anyway, I don't think my mother will be coming back anytime soon because after the welcome that she received yesterday, I wouldn't dare show up around here again. And I really hope that she doesn't show up because I'm just sick of the drama now. I want to move on with my life and start a new chapter. But I can't do that if she keeps showing up again and again. So I pray, and I hope that this is the last time that I have come across her. Update 3. Hey folks, so long time no see. I have been missing in action for quite a while now. Couple of months, I think. But you can't blame me for it. It was because I was applying to colleges and trying to get into a good one with the scholarship. I had been grinding really hard, and it all paid off. I'm in my first choice of school now, and yes, I'm sticking to the plan, but I had come up with a couple of months ago. My friend's cousin, who was applying to the same colleges, also got in here, and we're going to rent an apartment and live together. She's a really sweet girl, and the fact that she is my friend's cousin is just a cherry on the top because this way I get to keep in touch with everyone. The last couple of months have been very difficult for me emotionally, but my friends helped me get through it all. And I can't tell you guys how thankful I am to have such people in my life. I know a lot of people who have terrible parents and families rely on their friends for emotional support, but I have tried to avoid that so far. However, now that I know how far my friends are willing to go for me, I feel like they are my family. I'm always going to be grateful for everything that people have done for me. Seriously, I don't think I could have made it this far without everybody's help, and that includes the people here who reached out to me through messages and said such supportive things to help me through. This is just really strange and funny how my own mother hasn't even bothered to text me even once after I moved out. She didn't even care that I had unblocked her and she could actually talk to me. That's how little I mean to her. But you guys are my friends told me to have faith in myself because I could do it. It's really cute how little strangers on the internet did more for me than my mother did. But anyway, that's all in the past now. I'm looking forward to having a fresh start here, and I'm really excited for what the future holds. Update 4. Hey everyone, I didn't think I'd be back with another update so soon, but life has a way of throwing unexpected stuff at you, I guess. I thought I was done with all the drama from my family after moving out and starting college, but it looks like I was wrong. Things have gotten way more complicated than I ever expected, and honestly, I'm just exhausted. So, a few weeks ago, out of nowhere, I got a message from my stepdad. Yeah, the same stepdad who barely acknowledged my existence when I was living with them. He sent this long, rambling text about how he was sorry for how things had gone down and how he wanted to meet up to talk. At first, I didn't know what to think. Why was he suddenly reaching out now after all this time? Part of me wanted to ignore him, but another part of me was curious. Maybe he had something important to say, so I figured why not? I agreed to meet him at a cafe near my campus. When I got there, the whole situation felt awkward. He was sitting there, looking nervous, and I could tell this wasn't going to be a normal conversation. After some small talk, he finally got to the point. He told me that he had no idea my mom was going to kick me out over the college fund. He said she'd made that decision without even consulting him, and when she told him afterward, they had a massive fight. He looked genuinely upset as he told me this, saying that things had been really tense at home since I left. Apparently, my mom has been putting a lot of pressure on him to contribute more financially, even though he's still trying to recover from the financial mess his ex-wife left him in. He confessed that he's been questioning their entire relationship ever since I moved out, and that he's even considering getting a divorce. That was a lot to take in. I never really thought much about their marriage, but hearing that it's on the rocks because of what happened to me was kind of surreal. I didn't really know how to respond. Part of me felt bad for him because it sounded like he was genuinely struggling, but another part of me was just kind of numb. I told him that while I appreciated the apology, it didn't change the fact that my mom had treated me like crap. He nodded, saying he understood, but then he asked if I'd be willing to talk to my mom again, maybe help him figure things out between them. That's where I had to draw the line. I told him flat out that I wasn't interested in playing mediator between them. I have my own life to worry about now, and I'm not about to get dragged back into their drama. He looked pretty defeated after I said that. He thanked me for meeting up and left, and I thought that was the end of it. But a few days later, I got another message, this time from my mom. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity got the better of me. She said she'd heard about my meeting with my stepdad and wanted to talk. At first I didn't respond, but she kept messaging, saying she was sorry and that she missed me. She even tried to guilt trip me, saying that I was tearing the family apart by refusing to help. It's been a roller coaster of emotions since then. I thought cutting them off would be the hardest part, but dealing with their attempts to pull me back in is even worse. I still haven't responded to my mom, and I'm not sure I want to. Part of me wonders if she's just trying to manipulate me again, especially now that things aren't going so well for her and my stepdad. To make things even more complicated, I recently found out through some mutual friends that Jackson and Emma have been telling people at school that I'm the reason their dad might leave their mom. They're basically painting me as the villain in this whole situation, which really sucks. I've been getting weird looks from some of our mutual acquaintances, and a couple of people even unfollowed me on social media. It's like high school drama all over again, but now it's bleeding into my college life too. And if that wasn't enough, my mom has apparently been telling people that I'm ungrateful and that I abandoned the family over something trivial. She's playing the victim card hard, and it's working because some of her friends and even some of our extended family members have been reaching out to me, telling me I should reconcile with her. They're saying things like, "She's your mother, you only get one," and "family is everything." But where was that family loyalty when I was being treated like an outsider in my own home? It's all so hypocritical. One of the hardest parts of all this has been the feeling of isolation. Even though I'm surrounded by new friends at college and my roommate has been awesome, I still feel this deep sense of loneliness. I always thought that once I got out of that toxic environment, everything would magically get better. But I'm realizing now that the scars from that time are going to take a lot longer to heal. I've been seeing a therapist on campus to help me work through all of this, which has been really helpful. She's helping me see that it's okay to set boundaries with my family and that I don't owe them anything just because we're related. That's been a tough pill to swallow because I was raised to believe that family always comes first, no matter what. But at the same time, I can't keep sacrificing my own well-being for people who don't really care about me. Meanwhile, things with my mom and stepdad are apparently getting worse. My stepdad texted me again last week saying that he's moving out and looking for his own place. He said he couldn't take the constant fighting anymore and that he needed some space to figure things out. He asked if I wanted to stay in touch, but I told him I wasn't sure. I'm still processing everything and I don't want to get too involved in their problems. It's weird because for so long, I didn't really consider him part of my family. But now that he's reaching out to me, I'm starting to see that maybe he's not as bad as I thought. But I'm still wary of getting too close. To add to the chaos, my mom showed up at my campus last weekend. I wasn't expecting it at all. She texted me saying she was in town and wanted to see me. I didn't respond, but somehow she found out where I was living. She showed up at my dorm, and my roommate let her in because she thought it was just a regular visit from a parent. When I walked into the room and saw her sitting on my bed, I nearly lost it. She started off acting all sweet, saying she missed me and wanted to talk things through. But as soon as I told her I wasn't interested, she flipped. She started yelling, saying I was being selfish and ungrateful, that I was ruining the family. She even tried to bring up my dad again, saying he'd be ashamed of how I was acting. I couldn't believe she was using my dad to guilt trip me. I told her to leave, but she wouldn't. She just kept going on and on about how I was tearing the family apart. My roommate eventually stepped in and told her she needed to go, which only made things worse. My mom started yelling at her too, saying she had no right to get involved in our family matters. It got so bad that campus security had to be called to escort her out. It was beyond embarrassing, and now my roommate knows way more about my family drama than I ever wanted her to. Since then, I've been trying to lay low. I haven't heard from my mom since that day, but I'm sure it's only a matter of time before she tries to contact me again. I'm honestly at my breaking point with all of this. I just want to move on with my life and focus on my future. But it feels like every time I try, something else pulls me back into the mess I left behind. I know I need to keep my distance and focus on myself, but it's so hard when the people who are supposed to care about you are the ones causing all the pain. I'm trying to stay strong and remember that I deserve better than how they've treated me, but some days it's tough to keep that perspective. Anyway, thanks for sticking with me through all of this. Writing it all out helps a little, even if it doesn't fix anything. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm just going to keep putting one foot in front of the other and hope that things eventually get better. If anything else happens, I'll keep you guys updated, but for now, I'm just trying to survive each day as it comes.